For Mac users, finding a keyboard that matches both Apple's sleek aesthetic with a satisfying feel and performance can actually be a constant struggle. Over the past 4 months, I have taken that struggle off your desk. I put more than a dozen keyboards, from low-profile hits like a IQUNIX Magi 96 to budget brands like Rapoo, through demanding real-world testing from a productivity standpoint. After clearing the clutter, this is the definitive, no-nonsense list of the best mechanical keyboards you can buy for your Mac in 2026. I'm going to be giving an award in 9 different categories to each keyboard, ranging from best compact to best low profile to the best split keyboard. Oh, and before we get going, if at any time you did want to purchase one of these keyboards, I do have paid links down in the description and the top comment, and those really help me out in making videos like this. Starting out with the best compact, which is the Syntex Chrono 68. And by the way, each of these keyboards was given to me by the brand, but all opinions are my own and they had no say even in what content I was making, and even if I was making content. Now, as I mentioned, the best compact keyboard is the Syntex Chronos 68. This is a high-profile PBT capped magnetic seal switched keyboard. It is a 68% layout, has a metal casing, it's hot swappable, has RGB lighting. Now, as for the things that I really like about this keyboard, starting off with its premium quality, it is a full metal cased keyboard with magnetic switches that sound pretty good, considering Hall effect keyboards generally don't sound that great. It has the thinnest bezels of any keyboard I've tested. And it has the shine-through keycaps, which just kind of set things apart, when surprisingly not many keyboards have that feature. I also was really surprised at how good the layout was, being at 68%. I'm normally more of a 75% keyboard person, but it was an easy keyboard to use, and I wasn't constantly pressing wrong keys. Now, as for the downsides to the keyboard, even though it is a compact size, this thing is heavy. It by no means is going to be a keyboard you take with you. It is also a wired only, there's no Bluetooth or 2.4 gigahertz here, and a smaller size means you don't have any fancy features like knobs and volume buttons. Now, if you want a compact keyboard that is actually portable, let's go to the best portable keyboard on this list, and that would be the Epomaker HE68 Lite. This thing is a high-profile PBT capped, magnetic Hall effect switch, 65% compact keyboard. Now, to get that weight down, it is a plastic cased unit, but it is still hot swappable, meaning you could switch it to any switches that you want. And just like the last keyboard we talked about, it does have see-through keycaps, meaning that you can see the light come through the letters. Now, as for the things I liked about the keyboard, I was surprised how much I liked this thing. I actually put off reviewing it and even testing it because I thought it wasn't going to place on this list, but was I wrong and glad I tested it? Because even though it's lightweight, it still stays put on your desk, but it just really does feel good, and I will say, has some of the best sound of the keyboards I've used as well. And the optional carry strap, which I never installed on it, is nice to be able to take on the go. But as for the downsides to this keyboard, again, there is no Bluetooth or 2.4 gigahertz here. However, the nice thing about that is when it's in your backpack, you know for a fact it's not randomly pressing buttons. And like the last one, again, it does lack a control knob, meaning you're not going to be able to adjust things like music or your volume. Now, our third category is going to be the best low-profile keyboard, and that would be the Keychron K3 Ultra. This is a low-profile PBT capped magnetic switch. I have the Milk Palm banana switches. It is a 75% layout, and the body is plastic, but the railing around it is metal and actually wood. It of course is hot swappable, and it does have RGB rear lights, but they are not shine-through keycaps. Now, as for what I liked about this keyboard, it probably is the best alternative for somebody that is looking for an alternative to Apple's branded keyboards, as it looks extremely sleek, probably the most sleek of any keyboard on this list, and it is really, really easy to use right out of the box. The low-profile keys just work, and they work well, and I felt right at home as soon as I started using it. And I will say, the styling of this keyboard is the best of any on this list, or maybe that's just me. Now, as for the downsides, the wood has already cracked on me, which is a bummer. And I actually don't really like the switches. If I were to do it again, I probably would go with a different switch, as they don't sound amazing. They work and function really, really well, but the sound definitely isn't there. and the keycaps themselves feel a lot cheaper than the competition. Which leads us into the next category, which is the best foldable keyboard, and that is a random assortment of letters and numbers being the ProtoArc XK01TP. Now, unlike the rest of the keyboards on this list, it is not going to be a mechanical keyboard, but it is unique and a great Mac option if you want a portable foldable option. The keycaps are ABS plastic on a scissor switch. It does have an 88 key full-size layout though, but its case material is of course plastic to save on weight. And no, of course it's not hot swappable, meaning what you see is what you get. There is no backlighting here. Now, the upsides of this is it is foldable, which means you can fold it up and throw it into your backpack. In fact, it actually comes with its own carrying case, which is just pretty cool. Another benefit is you can connect multiple devices to it, up to 3, and there's individual buttons to be able to switch between those devices, meaning you don't have to constantly unpair and repair it to anything you're using. It also has that built-in touchpad, which is nice. And the portability on this thing is ridiculous. Like, it's so much smaller than any other keyboard, but you still have so many different keys to choose from. I found it was easy to use, no accidental button presses, and it randomly comes with a phone kickstand. Now, as for the downside, it is a cheap feeling keyboard. It is just cheap feeling to type on. There's no way around that. It also is a completely flat keyboard, which I never really noticed when I was using keyboards, which means it doesn't angle towards you at all, so your wrists are kind of in a little bit different angle than I'm used to. And also, the most annoying feature about it is they put the screenshot function button next to the backspace, which I was constantly pressing incorrectly. And the last downside to this is I don't 100% understand why this keyboard exists, and you wouldn't just use the much better keyboard that's on your MacBook. Now, before we get on to the rest of this list, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe as we test out men's gear like this all of the time, and make sure to like this video as it really helps me out in the algorithm. Now, getting away from that, let's jump into the best budget mechanical keyboard that I tested on this list, and that would be the Rappu V700A. This is a high-profile PBT keyboard with linear switches and is a 75% layout. Now, the case material on it is going to be plastic, but it does maintain a hot swappability, and of course has RGB backlighting. And now the best thing about it is for a budget keyboard, this has to be one of the better sounding keyboards on this list. I really appreciated that it has a hidden compartment for the little dongle for the 2.4 gigahertz, because that's actually not a given. And where are you going to store that without losing it? And I also appreciated the lighting throughout the keyboard, including the lighting on the bottom of the keyboard that kind of shines off to the side when you're using it. Now, as for the downsides to the keyboard, this thing has a lot of flex on it. If you press down the keys with any bit of force, you're going to start noticing flex in the keypad and the key switches. It does feel rather cheap because you are working with a plastic keyboard. And one of the most annoying things, yes, I know this is a Mac specific buyer's guide, but this is originally a Windows, but it does work well for Mac. But they mapped the command key to the Windows key, which is a tiny little key off to the left, instead of being to the Alt key like most others. Also, I think I probably would go with the white version instead of the black, as I think it looks considerably nicer. Next up, if you prefer to have a little bit more of a retro vibe to your keyboard, this is the best retro keyboard, and that would be the Newfie Kick 75. Now, I have the low profile PBT capped version. You can get a high profile version. It has the nano mechanical switches, of course. It is a 75% layout. The case material is plastic. It is hot swappable, thankfully. Now, what I really liked about it is the 8-bit styling on this clear cased keyboard is extremely unique and very, very cool. It even has a cool little retro looking knob up in the top right, and it also is one of the top tier sounding keyboards on this list. Now, I'm personally somebody that's finding that I prefer a low profile key, and that is the case here. It's extremely easy to use, keystrokes are quick, and you're right at home almost immediately. Meaning it makes an easier transition for just about anybody that's wanting to move into high quality mechanical keyboards away from your more basic options. And one of the coolest features is that it has a little rubber thing on the back of the keyboard that when removed, it allows you to be able to replace it with 3D printed components. Kind of random, but cool. Now, for the downsides is it is a little bit chunkier than I think it should be. Those bezels are pretty massive. And it always feels a little bit out of place on my desk, so I think you'd have to be somebody that already is leaning into that retro vibe if you wanted to get this keyboard. And the most annoying thing about it is there's this little magnetic piece on the far right of the keyboard that you just can peel off, and there's really no functional use for it. I tried researching it, and I have no idea what it does. Now, leading us to the next category, which is the best split keyboard. These are ergonomic keyboards where you can split them down the middle and be able to put them into any orientation you want. And the best one I tested was the Epomaker Split 65. This is a PBT high-profile keycapped keyboard. It uses linear switches, or at least mine does. You can choose from some other options. It is a 65% layout, has a plastic exterior, but makes up for it by continuing to be hot swappable. It does have RGB backlighting. Now, for the upsides to this keyboard is it lives a random and kind of cool double life. It is a split keyboard where you can have it in 2 different orientations. You can move it around to kind of fit your lifestyle best. But on the flip side, you can magnetically combine it so it's a more standard 65% layout. I also liked the styling of the keyboard where it progressively gets darker the farther down you go. And unlike many 65% layout keyboards, it does have a knob on the top for volume, among other things if you want to map it to that. Now, for a split keyboard, it is a high-profile keyboard, which means you do have to have wrist rests to be able to keep it being ergonomic. So you'd probably want to make sure, unlike me, you'd get a split wrist rest as well. And just like the Rapu we talked about earlier, the Windows key is mapped to the Command key for Mac, which is just annoying, which means I'm constantly pressing the wrong button. But you'd probably get used to that as you use it longer. And now into the next category, which is the best layout keyboard I've ever had, and that would be the Keychron K8 Max. Now I do want to say this is actually the keyboard I started it out on, and I probably tested it for about a year before I moved into the rest of these keyboards, so take this for a grain of salt. It is a PBT high profile keyboard using tactile brown switches. It is an 80% layout, which does a good job of mixing being compact while still having all the keys that you could want with a lot of space. It does have a premium metal casing, is of course hot swappable, utilizes RGB backlighting, and uses Keychron software. Now, the things I really like about it is its layout. The biggest thing is it's just so easy to use. You have so much space being an 80%, but it's not taking up a ton of space on your desk. It has its own dedicated area for the arrow keys, which is pretty cool. I also did like the fact that it had orange accent keys, which came in the box. You can swap them out for gray keys if you prefer. It has extremely high build quality considering it is an aluminum case. Keycaps on this are premium and feel really good. And this might just be the best starting point for anybody that wants to get into a much more real mechanical keyboard, but doesn't quite know what to get. Now, as for the downsides, my down key randomly flies off when I'm doing things like spreadsheets. And while the switches do work extremely well, they don't sound the best when compared to others. All right, this is the last category before we get into the best overall keyboard. And that is the best sounding keyboard, which is the Epomaker TH99 Pro. This is a full-size 99% keyboard, uses PBT high-profile keys. These are true jade mechanical switches. The casing is unfortunately ABS plastic, but it is still hot swappable and utilizes RGB backlighting. Now, the best thing about it is its sound. This thing sounds really, really good. The knob on it is extremely usable, and of course being a full-size keyboard means that you have all the keys you could possibly need. Now as for the downsides, this keyboard might actually be too big. This is the biggest keyboard on the list, and I do find that I have to push my mouse off so far to the right that I'm constantly bumping into the keyboard. I also wish the screen that comes on it did just a little bit more. It doesn't show all that much, and would probably be better suited just to be random LED lights. Also, the styling on it isn't exactly my jam. It may be yours, but it's not mine. And I know this isn't a super cheap keyboard, but it does feel on the cheaper end out of comparison to a lot of the other ones in a similar price point. And that leads me to the number one best keyboard out of all the keyboards on this list. This is my best overall keyboard, and in its secondary category being the best low profile full size keyboard, being the IQUNIX Magi 96. And this is the non-pro version, which means it doesn't have the little controls on the far right, but is still an amazing keyboard. It uses a PBT low-profile keycap on gold-red mechanical switches. It's an almost full-size keyboard at a 96%, and it has an amazing all-aluminum body. Of course, it is hot swappable, has rear RGB lighting. Now, as for the upsides on this, for a low-profile keyboard, which I know this is difficult to imagine, it is the best-sounding keyboard of anyone on this list. It tops it and makes it so that I just enjoy using it every single time. It is extremely well built. It is just such a nice keyboard. You gotta have this thing in your hands. That all aluminum case, even on the back, just feels great. And this is a stout, well thought out keyboard. And because it is a low profile keyboard, it is easy to use. In the main portion of the keyboard, you feel right at home when using it. And because it's a larger keyboard, you have all the keys you could possibly need. Now, as for the downsides, of course, even the best have downsides. On the far right, your number keypad and your arrows are a little bit scrunched together, and sometimes you hit the wrong button, especially if you're used to other keyboards. And I really, really wish this keyboard had see-through keycaps, because that would just round the whole styling out. Now, if you really like technology like this, I have a playlist up on the screen right now that will get you into the right direction. And don't forget to like and subscribe, as it really helps me out and gets you content like this.